everyone. I'm a bit shorter than the others, you probably noticed that. So you've had a CEO, whoops, did it work? Yeah. You've had a CEO, you've had a doctor, you've had a professor, now you have half a double act. I think that the academic status is rising, not falling there. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Norman Pace. I'm half of Hale & Pace, the younger, more handsome, more talented half of Hale & Pace. More importantly, I am also the house-trained husband of Beverly Pace here, who many of you will know as the chair of the Board of Trustees. Twice a day she says to me, I suppose you think you're funny, and that's the reason why in a nutshell. Now, some great person, probably me, once said you could put a whole life on a postcard. And I have actually put the story of a life on this postcard, the story of the life of Holly Pace, our daughter. And if you'll bear with me, I'd like to give you a few facts of why we became involved with the MRF almost at its inception 20 odd years ago. Okay, Holly's story. I remember Beverly and I went shopping in Safeways, I think it was, in Blackheath. And in those days, if you had a little baby, you could have a basket on top of your shopping trolley and push them around. Well, Holly was 4 weeks old, almost exactly. We were pushing her around Safeways, and of course a strip light in there, and she started to projectile vomit. We'd noticed that she was poorly before that, but she was always a quiet, kind of a pale girl, you know. So this vomiting didn't look right. It wasn't just baby vomit or anything. So we went home and called the GP. Now, after about 3 or 4 hours, no improvement in Holly's condition at all. The GP came along, and she, you know that telltale crease that they get, doctors in their brow? They give you a little clue that this isn't maybe the normal everyday occurrence. This doctor said, I don't see any signs of meningitis, particularly apart from vomiting, but let's take her to hospital and have her checked out just in case. So off we went to the local hospital. We were seen by the registrar. A lumbar puncture was performed on Holly. And I'll never forget, as Beverly and I stood in a room, a nurse, a very, very jolly, chubby nurse, came in and said, I'm afraid she's got a few bad bugs. And Holly had contracted Streptococcus A meningitis, a very, very rare form of the disease. At the time, there were only 14 documented cases in the Western world of this particular strain, and Holly was the first to survive. So that's the position we were in. During this time at Great Ormond Street Hospital, it was the very first comic relief, and Gareth Hale and I, our career was on the up and up. We were doing a lot of television, getting noticed, touring. I was at the BBC. On that very day, Beverly took Holly from our local hospital to, because Holly had contracted hydrocephalus, into Great Ormond Street Hospital, and I phoned from the makeup chair at the BBC in 1988, and Beverly was in complete tears. Holly had been put in this neurosurgical ward where it was like Newgate Prison, really. It was before the Wishing Well appeal, and Holly was one of a group of very, very sick babies in this ward, and Beverly was in pieces. I mean, she'd had a caesarean section 4 weeks before, postnatal depression, a very ill child, and we had an elder child as well at home to look after. And I think it's fair to say that's the first time she fell apart. And I rushed over in between rehearsals of Comic Relief and doing a live spot that night to try to see if I could help at all. Now, living with the consequences of this disease, it's good news and bad news, really. Okay, this has been our life over the last 20 years. Holly has had 7 operations on her brain. She has special needs, which include hydrocephalus, water on the brain, for which she has a system of VP shunts that take the fluid away from her brain because her brain can't absorb it anymore. She has intractable epilepsy. She has learning difficulties and hemiplegia, which is left-sided spasticity. Now, I remember when Holly was 5 years old, that's when she first started to walk after a fashion. She was hobbling around. We went to see an educational psychologist at the special school that Holly went to, and she said something that it was like a stab in the heart after 5 years of this. She said, about 25% of the pie has been taken away. My daughter's a pie. I thought, oh, well done, you're a good professional, aren't you? If she hadn't had this disease, she'd be a really, really clever girl. As it turned out, she is a really, really clever girl, but it's just another burden that you carry with you every day. Now let me talk a little bit about the difficulties Holly's had. At least 4, maybe 5 times she'd been rushed to accident and emergency. Once in Turkey when she was meant to be a bridesmaid at a wedding. She never was a bridesmaid. She spent 10 days in hospital in Turkey because her epilepsy had been triggered by a local infection. She's been near death at least 4 times over the past 20 years. And you can imagine, 24 hours a day, that's on your mind as a parent. All caused by meningitis. So, as I said earlier, some of the time this is difficult to take, and I'm starting to feel a little emotional going through it, I know Beverly wants to. But sometimes it's not all that bad, you know, because we still have Holly. Holly survived all of these problems, and so have we. And she's with us today. I'm going to ask her to stand up. Holly, would you stand up and turn around and face everybody? Round of applause for Holly, please. She's absolutely brilliant. So let me tell you some of the achievements of my wonderful, wonderful daughter. It's not all bad luck, it's good luck. We have her, and she's managed to do these things. 2 years ago, her medication was changed, okay? And we found that the preventative medication she was taking on a daily basis to prevent her having the seizures was actually causing them. It was sucking calcium out of her system. And low calcium is a trigger for epileptic seizures. So, sodium, sorry, come on, I'm talking about sodium, sorry, Mr. P. So they changed it, and for 2 years, Holly has been seizure-free. She's put on about 1.5 stone in weight. She's a proper young woman. And in those 2 years, let me tell you what she's done. She's attended the National Centre for Young People with Epilepsy down in Surrey as a resident student. She won Student of the Year in 2007. She has sold her GCSE artwork to PricewaterhouseCoopers, which a lot of working artists can't do. She walks the half a mile to college every single morning, which is a massive achievement for someone who has to wear a splint, and as you can see, usually uses a wheelchair for long distances. She is a member of Outreach, in which she explains her epilepsy to everybody, and recently she spoke at the House of Commons. One trusted, honest person in that building, at least on that. Holly's coming home from her 3-year course to live with us for a year, during which time London Borough of Bromley will be building housing for Holly to live in, because Beverly and I know to you we look like young whippersnappers, but we're getting on a bit. We want to make sure that when we inevitably die, Holly's provided for and is going to live in the comfort that she deserves, having had the life that she's had for 21 years. So in a year's time, she'll be living with 6 of her students that she went to school with in the village that she was brought up in, and she's going to have a fantastic life. That's the story of one life on a postcard, and that's the reason why Beverly and I have been involved with this brilliant organisation for the last 20 years. Thank you very much.